Hello, this is Natasha Edwina, and here is my new Instagram live show, God Vibrations, the Spiritual Sexual Empowerment Show. And while I wait for some folks to join, hey Trish, I will explain a little bit about my intention of creating this space. This is a place to have conversations and have a discussion about staying in alignment, staying in your power, staying in bliss, unity, and actually using bliss as a superpower. And there's a lot of ways that in the outside world right now, it feels like there's been some freedoms taken away from us. Hey, Chris. And so how do we, the more outside freedoms are taken away, or let's say even say outside options, such as traveling internationally right now would be one example. Where are our other avenues toward freedom? And how can we create more alignment and bliss? And so it's actually, when we think about it that way, it's about using what we have going for us and not focusing on what we can't control, right? And so that spiritual sexual conversation has a lot to do with knowing what turns you on. And I'm talking about not only sexually, but also just in life. What is it that drives you? What is it that is that creative spark? What is it that you want to use to move forward in life? Hey, Vic. So getting clear on that and then sort of playing with that, right? And so I want to use this as a space for people to come every Monday. It's going to be every Monday at 6. You can ask questions. We can discuss things back and forth. If there's a situation that you're having in a relationship, whether it has to do with relationship energy and the energetics around sexuality or the energetics around relationships, I want to be here to help you pathfind the way through. But the essential ingredient is staying in our power. And so right now it's just me and Prince. And my Prince mug and my cacao, which is energetically opens up the higher heart, and it actually is just a very slight like stimulant that actually brings more bliss and that feeling of unconditional love. It's ceremonial grade cacao, right? So that's just one little thing. But I think today what I'd love to talk about, unless any of you have some questions, feel free to put them in there. And I will be reposting these episodes as well. But what I'd like to talk about, I think because it's been coming up already today in some of my conversations and just as a theme, is desire and longing. And so when we look at this from the macro and the micro level, you see it's all connected. Whatever's happening in the macro is also happening in the micro, right? And so if you think about a desire that you might have had for a long time. Oh, right on time, Talia. Talking about desire and longing. And so Talia and I were speaking. She's one of my SSGs, so Soul Sister Goddess. We took a course together a couple of years ago with at Mama Gina's School of Womanly Arts. And that was a lot of fun and a lot of practice in some of these concepts, but I want to take it even deeper to a more spiritual conversation. So desire and longing. When we're desiring something, let's say it's a dream. Let's say it's somewhere that you want to live. Say it's somewhere that it's a career choice. It's something, maybe it's a relationship, your ideal relationship, or whatever that desire is in your life. There's something about the longing for it that makes it juicier when it comes into your life. So think back about something that you wanted for a really long time, maybe years, or that you were working toward, and how sweet it was when it finally came to you, right? And there's probably some things that you're still maybe hoping to manifest that haven't come to you, and then there's little things that came. And then think of things that are small. Maybe they're smaller things, but they came to you super easily, and maybe they didn't taste as juicy or as sweet, right? And so how do we play with that concept and enjoy the desire, enjoy the longing? Another example is right now, again, not being able maybe to travel internationally or do these things and that we wanted to do. How can we long for that international vacation or long for that travel and think about how sweet it's going to be when we actually get to do that? Now, bringing it back down to the micro, your sexual interactions. Sometimes you're so turned on, or you're so juicy, or you're so ready to go because there's been lots of things leading up to that circumstance, right? That you're just going to go for it. But most of the time, isn't it more enticing, more pleasurable to play with the desire, to play with the longing, to slow things down, to experiment with different kinds of touch, to tease, to play with the energy back and forth, right? And you can see how that relates to life. And the more that we practice that, let's say in our sexual interactions, or even in your self-pleasuring time by yourself, you are practicing that muscle, and you're building up tension, building up for a better experience when that desire comes to you. Are you resonating with anything I'm saying? Do you know what I'm getting at? And do you have any questions or examples or anything you want to share? Just feel free to, comment or put things in there. I know that there's something, I think I can do. Oh yeah, there's a question. There's a question box. I don't know exactly how all these things work. Instagram changed things again. Talia's saying yes. Okay, good. So, how do we practice that every day? In what ways can we be focused on settling into the not having yet, right? So, and enjoying that as maybe the bigger part of the journey. And Vic says, yes, I'm with you. Awesome. Yeah. So what is it that you can do every day that sort of whets your appetite a little bit? What is it that you can do every day that gets you a little bit excited, because that big goal or that dream or that thing that you're longing for that's in the future is going to get you motivated. That's your driving force. Now we're thinking about like libido, it's life force energy, or kundalini, it's life force energy, right? It's empowering energy, it's creative energy, it literally, even sexual energy, spiritual sexual energy, it creates life, right? So how do we tap into that and learn how to harness that? So if you saw my Instagram post that I retweeted, and I talked about sex magic, and it was about, at that point of orgasm, when you're about to orgasm, thinking about or bringing your attention to or bringing your consciousness to what you want, and it just sends that kundalini, that life force energy towards that desire, right? And it helps it manifest quicker. Now, one of the things that I do sometimes with my sister goddesses, and Talia and I did this earlier today, is we share a healthy brag, and then we share a gratitude, and then we share a desire. But the brag gets you in that place of excitement, feeling good. The gratitude is the soil for that desire, and then stating the desire out loud is really powerful, right? And so this is obviously a non-sexual technique that you can use, but it can include sexual desires, it can include career desires, it can include romantic desires. And so, and even in your partnerships, it's, it can get less exciting when it's the same process all the time, and you know what to expect from your partner. Of course, you want the security, and you want the stability in relationships. That's very important. I talked again in my Instagram post today about a safe container. And so we're meditating or we're doing any kind of growth work, you want that safe container. That's really, really important. But you also equally want that tease, that buildup, that like stimulation, that thing that keeps you engaged, right? And that's going to be a little bit different for everybody in the, let's say, the sexual arena, but also with what we desire in life. And if any of you are single out there and you're on dating apps, or you're looking for your partner, you quickly get to that conversation about life goals. Like, what do you want in the future? And is that in alignment? Because if that's not in alignment, then you might decide not to waste your time. And I say waste your time. It's not that it's a waste of time if that person's not in alignment. It just depends on what your goals are. If you're very sure that you're looking for your life partner and you don't want to get distracted from that, then you're probably not going to date that person. If you know that you're not ready for a relationship, but you just want to practice dating again, or practice socializing or whatever else, then you can be upfront about that and say that this is where I'm at, and I don't really have any intentions, and maybe my mind can be changed, but this is sort of where I'm at. That's also the consent conversation, right? And we can get more into that anyway. But anyway, anybody have any questions? Just checking in. Feel free. You guys are all real quiet. Oh, and the other thing too that I want to talk about with this show is that when we're using bliss as a superpower, so when we're harnessing and tapping into our bliss, we have to clear a bunch of sludge out of the way. That's not a clear channel unless we clear and declutter, right? And so clearing the sludge out of the way might be shame. I think shame is one of the biggest things. And this is really important. I want to bring this up because there's been a lot of movement in the women's empowerment movement in the last couple of years where, we've made progress as a society with not shaming women as much. Sexual shaming. I'm Gen X. So when I was growing up and I was coming of age in the 90s, that was like the main way that we would control women, is to sexually shame them. And it happened from both men and women. And it was common and it was hurtful, and it really shuts down women's shine and radiance and sexual empowerment. And that's a lot of like subconscious sludge to hold on to, and most women, we have to undo that and unwork that so that we can totally open up when it is safe with our partners, right? And not be bringing that into the sexual and the intimate and the relational aspects. And I don't know where that came exactly from, but I do know that religion does play a big role in that shame and using shame to control. It's just a very overt, obvious place that comes in. And so religion is sort of, religion doesn't have as much power in society anymore. And that sexual shaming of women doesn't have as much power in society anymore. We see this because we have so many influencers. I mean, I could name handfuls of them on Instagram alone, of these women that have stepped up and used their platform to just say, I'm not tolerating this sexual shaming anymore. And they really do. They're like the sacrificial lambs. They do put themselves in the line of fire, and they catch it. So many trolls, so many haters, so many negative comments, but they hold steady because what they're doing is bigger than them, and it's helping other women. And so those other women are watching this and they're being quiet and they're realizing it. But we don't need religion and sexual shaming anymore because the shame has now shifted. Now the shame is masks or no masks. It's your political party. It's the same shame is still there. And it's just different topics, right? And so if we are going to truly live in our bliss, what are we going to move toward that we feel more bliss? So maybe we're very passionate about our political beliefs, but if we spend so much time each day, each and every day, defending that, are we really in our bliss? It's about picking your battles because you want to set a boundary. You want to say what you believe in and what you want to engage in, but you also want to be mindful of what creates more bliss in your body, because that's one of the most powerful forces. So Vanessa's saying, sick of sexual shaming, especially by other women who are intimidated by women, by women who is open with their sexuality. Yeah, so that happens a lot because I honestly think that the patriarchal way that we're set up as a society, it really pits women together as competition. And so this masculine energy, whether it's in a man or a woman, is independent. It's competitive. It's like a little, jarring. Like if men want to build their testosterone, they go out in nature and they conquer something, or they go alone, or they're with a bunch of guys and they grapple, or that sort of, or lifting weights, like that builds their testosterone. That helps them feel strong and powerful, right? But women, we have different biology, so that's not necessarily what does it for us. But I'm going to say tend to, because there's some men are different, some women are different, right? But we are wired to connect. We're not wired to compete. And so when we connect with another woman, that's where our power comes from, and having a group of women. But our society tries to divide and conquer. So you've seen this in patriarchy: divide and conquer women, pit them against each other. The rooster in the hen house, having all the hens to choose from, and they all have to fight over the one rooster. That's just not the way that society is oriented. It's just not the way that it works. But we still believe that we have to behave that way, and it's subconscious. It's not like anybody's consciously doing this, but you see it also. You see it also in some of these other things. Like right now, in the U.S. there's a in the world there's a divide and conquer strategy. You know, we're more polarized than ever, and so that's not going to work. So if we want to get back to unity, because we're talking about yin and yang. Bye, Chris. When we're talking about yin and yang and that balance of masculine, feminine energy, it's unity. It's unity consciousness. Yes, there's a duality, and yes, there's a polarity, but it's unity. It's together. There's the balance of it, right? And then we tap into that inside of ourselves. And so harnessing that's where that transcendence comes. The essential oil that I'm using right now is called Transcendence, and I did that intentionally. It's transcending a lot of this nonsense to be in your power and be in your bliss and connection. As human beings, we're wired to connect, whether you're man or woman. So it really is about connection. Yeah, anybody else have any questions or comments or ways that you see this playing out? What are you all feeling, thinking? What's coming up for you as you're listening to me talk? And by the way, in future episodes, I'm planning on having some guests and some other, stimulating conversations, looking at all of these dynamics. But I really want to let this be a place where we can talk about holding on to our bliss, holding on to our pleasure, holding on to desires, and playing with that energy, right? And noticing it in everything. So everything is a metaphor, right? Noticing it everywhere. And I'll just give you like kind of a interesting example. I was away for the weekend in Santa Monica celebrating my daughter's birthday, and it was my best friend's birthday as well. My daughter actually had a birthday 2 weeks ago, but I was really busy finishing a paper, so we couldn't celebrate that weekend. And I said, as soon as you're back with me again, we'll take a trip. We'll stay in a hotel and have a nice little getaway. Now, my son, being 10, easily gets addicted to his phone and electronics, right? And I was shocked that once we got to Santa Monica, he left his phone in the car. He didn't even want to take it with him. And I was like, what are you doing? Don't you want to grab your phone? And he's like, no. He's like, I can, if you need me, if I get lost, I'll just tell somebody to call you. He was not attached to his phone because something more interesting was pulling him. And that was going to the beach, riding the birds around Santa Monica, like exploring, seeing what we could see, going out to brunch, just a change of scenery, something new, right? And so no longer did I have to worry about him, stop playing with your phone, put your phone away, trying to get him away from the phone. All I had to do is create a more enticing offer or a more enticing activity. Now, can I take him away every weekend? No, I can't do that. It's not going to happen. It was actually our first family vacation, just the three of us, that was not attached to a wedding or a funeral or anything like that. So it was really, really special. And I realized, because this sort of thing doesn't happen very often, how important that is, that quality time, that really noticing my kids and tuning into them. And obviously, I'm talking about intimacy right now. I'm talking about human to human contact. And you can take this and bring that, it's a similar dynamic, into your relationships, your friendships, your romantic relationships, your sexual relationships. You're tuning in, to that human being that's beside you. And so another example is my son. So we got a little bit too hungry, right? And my son, his blood sugar started to get low, and he started, whining and getting kind of aggressive. And then it was time to order, and he didn't want to order anything. He's like, no, I don't want anything. And so me, knowing how he operates and just knowing that he had low blood sugar and he's stubborn, he's a Taurus like me. Actually, we have all the same star stuff, Taurus, Cancer, and Libra mixed in. And so I'm like, he's just already lost his ability to regulate. He's just gone. He feels isolated, gone. And so I ordered him something big for myself that I knew that he would also like, that we could share, and it wouldn't be too much surplus if he really decided to dig his heels in. But I didn't force him to eat. I didn't do anything. He sat there again for about maybe 3-4 minutes, and then he finally was like, oh, that looks good. Again, an enticing option. And he ate, and afterwards he was so happy. He's on my lap cuddling and all of that stuff. So it's tuning in to the person that's right in front of you. And so we bring that into the sexual conversation. How are you doing that? How are you doing that in your sexual interactions with your lover, with your partner? How are you doing that in your conversations with your friends? Is your phone down? Like, are you tracking them? Are you listening to them on all levels? Are you noticing their body? Are you tuning into their needs? Are you predicting what they might need? I was a little disappointed with the service in the hotel. It was a beautiful hotel, but the service was not up to par. And I've worked in hotels my entire life, so I guess I have a certain standard. And one of those things that I thought was basic was anticipating the guest needs. So they mistakenly put me in an ADA room, which is, whatever, but then they didn't offer to carry my bag. So if I actually was disabled, wouldn't you anticipate the need that I might need somebody to help me carry my bags up to the room? That sort of thing. So how are we doing this in our relationships? Anticipating needs, tracking, noticing. And when we clear our own clutter and we get rid of, again, the shame, the nonsense, the old stuff that's in our emotional field, then we can get more in touch with that and be more present, right? And then, of course, any kind of meditative practices, self-care practices, nutrition, anything that you do to add in to that alignment is going to help you be more present sexually. So part of my research is in the experience, the mindful sex, female sexuality. In my PhD program, I've written some papers about it. If that's something that you're interested in reading, you can send me a message. I'm happy to share the research paper with you. But one of the things that I found is that long-term meditators, 10 years plus, actually had better sex lives. And they researched them against long-term athletes and non-exercisers. So it wasn't the exercise that was creating a better sexual experience for these, and it was subjective ratings. It was the presence. It was meditation, yoga, that sort of thing that kept you present, clearing away all of the other things, and connecting to this oneness energy. So another thing that I'd like to bring up as far as that connection and as far as relationships go is that human beings are a mirror of us, right? And so when we meet another person, we can be very fond of another person, and sometimes what that fondness is we like the reflection of ourselves in them. So we see something in them that stirs something in us, but we think it's them that's doing that, but it's really us. And it's showing us a need, and again, a desire or a longing that we have for our life, right? And then, there's soul contracts and all of that stuff that goes into it too. But I think it's important to realize this, that when we're choosing to be with somebody or not choosing to be with somebody, it's because of the reflection of what we see in them. And also when we are, and thank you for the comments, you guys, I appreciate you letting me know that this is landing with you. When we recognize that it's really us and it's a reflection, and that we also project good things onto them. So we might see in them like a good dad or like a good mother, or we might see in them that they would be an exciting, adventurous partner, and maybe that's not true. Maybe it's not, but that's what we're hoping, and that we see other things and we get our hopes up, but we want that, right? So we project that onto them. And I know for myself, in my experiences of dating, I've just been wildly surprised by all of the things that are assumed about me, and to the point of like, wow, I wonder, I'm just really curious. I start asking people now, like, what it is, where they got that from, or how they got that assumption, because I hear such wildly different things of people, telling me how I am or their experience of me. And I kind of laugh because it's not consistent. So it's partly their experience of me, so it's partly their projections onto me, and then partly the alchemy, because when you have two energies together, you create a third energy that's different, and that's why you're going to have a different type of relationship with this person than that person. And I know I've also talked about, if you've been following me for a while, I've also talked about twin flames, right? And there's this idea that the twin flame is like your ultimate relationship, but that's not necessarily true. It's just the one that's very like intense, and you can see this all sides of each other, but there's different flavors of relationships that are, maybe it's not even a twin flame relationship, but it can be more satisfying and more productive and more available, in this lifetime. And Talia's saying, Vanessa's saying, I do this all the time. Talia's saying, idea versus reality. Yeah, idea versus reality. So what is it that is possible and potential in this person? And what is it that, is offering you what you need right here, right now? And, I think about it too, the types of relationships, because this is a romanticized idea that there's this one person that's for us, this idealized love, this Prince Charming, this princess that Sleeping Beauty, we're gonna wake up with her kiss. This is hammered into us from a very young age. And when we're that young age, watching those Disney movies and reading these books, we are hypnotizable, because before age 8 or 9, we are primarily in theta waves, that means we absorb everything around us and we put it into our schema. I was just watching the Muppet movie the other day, and I was shocked by all of the things in there that really, affected me. Like they're getting in the car and they're driving to California. Here I am in California. I didn't realize how much the Muppet movie affected me, but I watched that movie so many times as a kid, listened to the soundtrack so many times. It really did affect me subconsciously. And I don't know, maybe that's why I'm single now. If I'm modeling my relationship off of Kermit and Piggy, I don't know. Maybe that's a problem. But just a joke. I've had many beautiful relationships. Okay, so, but really, like, that idea that we have, it's so romanticized. But what about, somebody who's married to the love of their life and they die? And then what does that mean for their next partner? Does that mean that next partner is less than? It doesn't. It means that it's a different type of relationship, and it has a different, different alchemy, because it's two different people that join in a different way. And you might also see this when you're with somebody who brings out a certain something in you that another person doesn't. And you see this with sexual chemistry and magnetism. There's some people that you can even find them physically attractive and say that's a beautiful human inside and out, but there's just no chemistry. Like, you can even try to make chemistry, but there's just no chemistry. I think astrology has a play in that. I think, again, our experiences as kids and like those different energetic elements, but it is energy. And so we have to pay attention to that energy. Likewise, there might be somebody that we have amazing chemistry with. And it's very like intense, but they don't want the same goals, or they're not living the same lifestyle. That's really important to us, right? And so how do you balance that out and know what's important to you? And then, knowing yourself. Talia's saying tips on staying at peace instead of anxiety when you want something. Great question. And Vanessa says different people bring out different sides of ourselves. So yeah, tips on staying at peace. That's a tough one, because I'll tell you what, I am a very passionate person, and I can get a little obsessive sometimes in my passion about many things. And it's a good thing, because if I didn't have that obsessive quality, then I would not still be in a PhD program after 7 years. I would have given up a long time ago. Vic's saying I'm enjoying all this. Oh, thank you. Awesome. So, when you're in that longing, we already talked about playing with it. I think it's using that to inspire you to do other things. Like, I think most of my life, this is like an astrology thing. I've seen it in my chart too. I usually have at least some kind of crush or something, something that I'm jazzed up about, like a person or an idea, and it might even be a celebrity. It's very rare for me not to have something that's sort of pulling me forward. And I think you just put it into context. You realize that, like you said before, Talia, there's fantasy and there's reality. So you can use the energy of it without having to think that it has to be in your life, right? So, and then you can be mindful. You can observe and see what comes up when, the idea of that desire or that person, in my example that I'm using, might come up. But if it's a desire, let's say like, gosh, when I was, I wanted to move to California, right? Or I didn't want to move to California necessarily. I wanted to move to a warm climate. I actually had my heart set on Belize. So I visited Belize when I was 20, and I cried on the plane home. I never wanted to come back to Wisconsin, but I did come back, and the desire was so strong for me to live there and just go back there. I didn't know what to do with myself. So what I did is I listened to, while I was there, the first time I saw this great soca band. So I, bought the album, and I befriended the lead singer. Actually, I had a crush on the lead singer. Let's just be honest. And I listened to that album every single day, and I used it to work out. I got fit like in the springtime, and I just got really focused with my academics, because my academics and finishing school, my undergrad degree, was my ticket out of Wisconsin and out of the snow. So I set the intention that as soon as the snow flies after graduation, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm gone. And then a few years later, I went on spring break and visited a friend in Tempe, Arizona. Cost of living wasn't so high compared to Wisconsin. It was kind of, palm trees and desert. It was kind of a new thing. So that was my next micro goal. So I got there. It's following your pleasure. It's following your bliss. It's following what feels exciting, what feels good, what creates that warmth in your belly, and not restriction, and that feeling of expansion and FOMO. Like if you're afraid of missing out. And for me, it started to get cold in October in Wisconsin, and I was like, oh man, like I haven't made plans to go. I've been telling everybody for 3 years, I'm out of here as soon as I'm done with school. Now I'm done with school. Should I get a job here? I didn't find anything enticing for work, and I only had $300. It's not enough money to move, and I couldn't work enough to actually make a surplus without getting 2 jobs, right? So I'm like, well, I'll take my chances. And I got a U-Haul. I found somebody else who wanted to move, so we split the U-Haul expenses. We split the moving expenses. I found a roommate in Tempe, Arizona. My dad helped me, and I moved to Phoenix with $300 and no job. And my dad was so mad at me. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you thinking? And I had a job interview, that's all, and I had faith. And, I did get that job, and then I got another job in the meantime as a waitress. And it all worked out. I landed on my feet, but it was because I was following a desire. I was following that started in Belize, which was that waking up, right? So I'm still, this is 20 years ago, I'm still not in Belize, but my next desire, I would like to be in the Caribbean somewhere. And so now you can see this has been like a 20-year longing in some ways. And maybe it's not Belize, maybe it's somewhere else in the Caribbean, or maybe another island that's like the Caribbean. I'm open to it, but it's been a long-term thing. And so I know, you probably noticed, I wear a lot of bright colors. I love lots of different, like Caribbean music, like these sorts of things. This keeps me connected to my desire. So that's how you use it. I don't feel bad about not being there. I know if it's meant to be, and if it brings me that much pleasure, that I will end up being there. I visited the Bahamas last year. I had an amazing time, and it just reminded me like, oh man, this feels like home to me. So, and it's this, and then, again, bringing this conversation back to the micro and the sexual energy, because we're talking about passion, we're talking about bliss, we're talking about attractive magnetic energy, and how we can harness that through our sexual interactions that carry over into the bigger scene of our life. You're not gonna just be experimenting sexually with somebody that doesn't have that pull or that charge. Like, what's the point? You want to be intentional, and perhaps there's something in that person that reminds you of like where you want to be or who you want to be with, right? And perhaps that person's on the road there. So most of us, when I talk to people, we have just a certain look that we're attracted to. Most people, not everybody, but there's a certain look of people that we're attracted to. Maybe we like tall, dark, and handsome. Maybe there's like a certain features, facial features or body type or whatever that we tend to be attracted to. Where did that come from? And why is that there? And I talk to people, and I see, and I've seen it in myself too, like there's people that I've dated that seem to get like a little bit closer. Maybe each person is a little bit closer, to that ideal. And, yeah, you get to have fun with it. And then, okay, I feel like we should talk about jealousy and envy too on this process as you're moving toward your desires and the longing. And this might even tap into that jealousy with other girls and other women. When you see somebody that has something that you want, and I think Mama Gina talks about this too, is it's just an alert system to you that it's important to you, that you care about that. Like, I can see somebody with like a Range Rover and a mansion, and I'm gonna be like, oh, that'd be fun, that'd be cool, but I don't get jealous because I don't really have a desire for that. That's not as important to me. And I was telling Talia today, as long as, I have ocean, I have warm weather, I have laughter, I have music, there's certain things in beautiful surroundings and comfortable, like that's really what's important to me. And I've created that, and do I want more? Yeah. Why not? Like, let's create more. But noticing, what it is that is important to you, I think is something to keep in mind. Anyone else have any questions or comments or anything coming up for you as I'm going on? It feels a little bit weird kind of I feel like I'm kind of talking to myself, but not. It's been a long time. For those of you who know me personally, I can talk, so it's all right. Yeah, but just, being mindful, being intentional about where you're putting your energy. And it's an energy conversation. And you want to be moving more towards your bliss, less towards the things that are a waste of energy or an energy, you're feeling exhausted or it lowers your energy. And when you're keeping your energy high in that way, it'll help point the way. And so we don't have to know the how. We don't have to know how to get there. We just have to know what it is that turns us on. And again, I mean turns us on in all the ways. Career-wise, where we want to be living, the kind of life that we want to live in this lifetime, what we're willing to do for that. Like, what choices, what are we willing to walk away from? What are we willing to take a risk with? What are we willing to be patient with? And once we know that, we get to experience the beautiful twists and turns and how life plays out for us that way. And I've been talking a bit about relationships and partnership, but you can play with this turn on in your self-pleasuring too. So you can try different types of touches. And I'm not even talking about because I think this porn obsessed kind of like get quite right to the chase, like that sort of sexuality that we were all kind of raised on, that really I believe does more harm than good, because it doesn't honor this desire and this longing and this buildup and this intensity. I mean, you can get to the point where you are so turned on that just a kiss can create that orgasmic experience, right? But that takes some energy and some efforting and some time and some patience. And so when you think about that with your goals, that's what you're doing with some of these long-term goals, and it's so sweet, right? When you get there, it's so intense. And so when we're practicing, even like in self-pleasure, playing with that energy or getting used to that energy, just something even like this. Like, I have this feather, I keep it, this is, again, I got this in my mastery course. I keep it in my living room, and it's sort of like this altar, which is actually my family altar. But this doesn't really mean anything sexual to me. It's sensual. And so, it feels good to just do this. Or if maybe you notice, or you put candles on, or I have essential oils, or I have flowers and plants in my space because it delights my senses. So what can you do that's delighting your senses? And especially if you come from a culture that's very stoic, like I do, there's not always a lot of emphasis on delighting the senses. It's more like put your head down at work and get the job done and be really practical. And so you might have to work at this for a little bit, right? So I put effort into delighting my senses. And I was just telling my sister goddess, Talia, today, that even when I drink kombucha or soda water, I drink it in a hand-painted wine glass, a hand-painted roses on it. And I hate doing dishes. Like, this one thing I just do not like, I put them in the dishwasher, and if anybody uses a dish that can't be in the dishwasher, I get angry. Like, I'm like, you take care of that, I'm not washing it. But I actually love hand washing this glass, because this glass now symbolizes adding a little extra pleasure to a very mundane, normal experience, right? And so how can you do that every day? How can you create that desire and longing in yourself? So I'm not thinking about like, oh man, I wish I was at a 5-star hotel and being waited on or whatever. I'm like, I'm gonna have my Epsom salts in my bath at home. I'm gonna have my soda water in a wine glass. I'm gonna take my time and enjoy it. I'm gonna notice, I'm going to smell my food before I eat it and gobble it down, those sorts of things. And your life starts to become, you start to find the sacred and the erotic in the mundane. So that's one way to play with that, the desire and longing, and then it becomes a way of being. We become, we don't accept anything less. Why would we? If that's the way that, we like to operate and treat ourselves to that sensual pleasure. So I'm noticing the time, and I think it'll probably cut us off in about 15 minutes. So maybe this is a good time to end this. And Vanessa says, added richness to life and sensuality. Yes, absolutely. And we need that more. The more that we're in lockdown or restricted, even like dining, I was in Santa Monica and they're wearing masks and face shields and rubber gloves and all this stuff. And it's different. It's different, right? And that's okay, because maybe we don't put that sensual experience of eating out on restaurants anymore. We take it inward, because now this is, the way that restaurants only way they can stay open or whatever else. So we bring that sensual experience into our life in other ways, instead of externalizing it or expecting somebody else to provide it or somebody else to create it for us. So how can we do that? All right, so I will thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it on this first episode. I just wanted to kind of play it by ear, see what themes were coming up, connect with you, have a discussion. But I would love if you message me your questions, and anybody who's watching this replay, message me your questions if there's a question you want me to answer about intimacy, relationships, sexuality, the energetics of this stuff. And I just think that we can create a space here to create bliss, more unconditional love, more self-love, less shame, and just create a healthy sexuality and see it as a spiritual process, and stay in our power. Just live the good life. That's the idea. Hey, Jen, I'm just wrapping up. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you join next week. All right, everyone, good night. I hope you have a wonderful night. Your homework is do something sensual tonight. Do something that delights one of your senses tonight, and see how that changes your mood and starts to change your attitude a little bit. I'll do the same. Good night, everyone.